Special thanks to all of the Tocqueville Society and Women United members in attendance today. Supporting whole families is a focus point for both groups. So we decided to come together to host this webinar. On a personal level, I am very excited for today, and the topic for today being supporting whole families. It personally really resonates with me. I was raised by a single mother of three who immigrated to the US on her own. So especially in our younger ages, she really relied on government subsidized programs and the support of her community. And with that, she was able to raise three kids who went through college and are now active members of the community. So I can really speak to the work that we're doing here and how it affects generations to come. So with that, I'd like to give you a quick roadmap of the next hour. First, we will hear from David Kroom, Assistant Director for Post-Secondary Achievement of Innovation of Ascend at the Aspen Institute. Next, we will get a sneak peek of the Supporting Whole Families report, as well as the 5 key takeaways from Peter Arcanium. I hope that I didn't butcher that, Peter. Forgive me if I did. And next, we'll gain the perspective of a SparkPoint ambassador and listen to her personal story on how SparkPoint has really impacted her life. Finally, I invite you all to participate in our breakout room brainstorm session to apply what you hear and learn today into work that we can continue to do to disrupt this generational poverty. Now I'll pass it to Chana Sweet of United Way Bay Area for a brief introduction, and then we'll go ahead and jump into the webinar.
Thanks so much, Summer. Great overview. And I have the distinct pleasure of introducing David Kroom. David Kroom graduated from MIT, and then locally, he attended UC Berkeley for his master's in public policy. And David, again, is the Assistant Director for Post-Secondary Achievement and Innovation of Ascend at the Aspen Institute. And there at the Aspen Institute, he leads the Aspen Post-Secondary Success for Parents Initiative. And I know that's kind of a mouthful, but David will go ahead and explain all of what that means. He's going to give a really fun overview of exactly what this topic is about. And we've had the pleasure of working with David in the past because United Way Bay Area is part of the Ascend Network, which is the national hub for 2-generation solutions. And now that I've given a little teaser, David, I'm very pleased to pass the mic to you.
Awesome, thank you very much. I'm going to share a presentation, and hopefully Zoom will be nice today. Okay, can you all see the presentation? Yes, it looks like I'm seeing dots, perfect. Well, awesome. Well, thank you again to United Way Bay Area for this invitation. I will spend about 15 minutes just sharing with you all a few different things. One, who I am and what this work is and what we do at Ascend at the Aspen Institute. Second, the 2Gen work and kind of what is 2Gen, why we care about it, why we deem ourselves to be the national hub of 2Gen solutions. And then sharing more about students who are parents. So my work under the Post-Secondary Success for Parents Initiative is really exclusively focused on those individuals who are parents who are getting their first post-secondary credentials, so undergraduate degrees, vocational credentials, and the like. And so I'll share some statistics and also a little bit about the work that I do under the PSP banner here at Ascend. So as was mentioned, Ascend, first off, let me just talk about who Ascend is. So Aspen Institute is a nonprofit that we bring together thoughtful people with diverse backgrounds and points of view. We cultivate and support values-based, purpose-driven leaders in many communities, and we turn ideas into action and impact for individuals and society. So our work at Aspen mostly focused on domestic policy and programming, although we do have international work. It's a really interesting sort of nonprofit where we have different policy programs. So we're kind of decentralized that focus on different areas from ocean policy to family economic security, K-12, post-secondary education, and all over different systems. Our program, Ascend at the Aspen Institute, has been around for about 10 years. And we see ourselves as a national hub of breakthrough ideas and collaborations that move children and the adults in their lives to educational success, economic security, and health and well-being. We take a two-generation approach to our work, focusing on children and the adults in their lives together. And we bring a gender and racial equity lens to our analysis. And everything that we do, we draw on the expertise and experience of parents and families. So as was mentioned, we have two, I would say, major platforms of our work at Ascend. One is a national network of over 440 nonprofit and governmental agencies, including UWBA Bay Area. All those organizations are at the kind of various continuums of 2Gen work. So figuring out kind of where 2Gen is and how they can bring more child or adult elements into their work, are being a really whole family 2Gen focused organization. And so those organizations are all across the country doing really amazing work in all 50 states, DC, and Puerto Rico. We also have a national fellowship of over 80 individuals who are heads and leaders in state systems, at post-secondary institutions and the like, who are Ascend Fellows and who are at various stages of implementing two-generation work within their systems and their contexts. And so all the work that we do here at Ascend, including the PSP initiative, we draw on the expertise of those fellows, of the network partners, and importantly, the families and parents that they're serving in their work. So I mentioned the 2Gen approach, and I'm sure many of you already know about it, but this is some of the graphics that you've probably seen, or we use either Ascend graphics. So as I mentioned, 2Gen approaches are those that build family well-being by intentionally and simultaneously working with children and the adults in their lives together. And so this continuum I find to be a really helpful tool, because many cases, colleges, our systems that I'm talking to, state higher education executive offices and the like, they're really focused on the parent or adult focused end of this continuum. And so my work is really about trying to drive their awareness around the child elements that they can add to these systems, whether it be childcare, subsidized childcare. We recognize that parents experience more housing and food insecurity, and all these works, all the different sort of programming that SparkPoint and other sites really bring to the table to provide these sort of supports to adults, and in many cases parents enrolled at various institutions and stakeholders across the Bay. So really we're interested in parent focus, but a lot of times I'm also talking to child focus and early childhood providers, and thinking about how they can be engaging adults, and like Head Start in many cases being the 2Gen kind of showcase. They're engaging their parents and providing expertise and their voices in the children's classroom, but also engaging them. What are you doing in terms of employment and training for yourself, so you can achieve that family sustaining wage for you and your family? And so that's another idea around 2Gen that we are really working toward. We have what we call 6 different core components of 2Gen. I'm not going to go through all of these, but in the scheme of things, we have post-secondary education being one of those important cogs. So we believe that if a parent is able to achieve a high quality first post-secondary credential, that they'll be able to attain a family sustainable wage. And that's something that we find to be really important. And that's why we have this work focused on post-secondary success for parents. But our work touches on health and well-being, physical and mental health, economic assets like housing, and then this idea of social capital, that low-income families tend to be highly isolated. And so how can we provide the sort of networks that they need in order to feel connected to their various post-secondary providers, to feel supported as they undergo this endeavor to stay enrolled in a college or post-secondary system, so they can achieve that post-secondary credential. And then lastly, around 2Gen, we have these 5 kind of principles as we define 2Gen. And importantly, I bolded The first one, because this is to us what makes a policy or program specifically to gen in nature, is that you're measuring and accounting for outcomes for both children and families together. And so in our mind, many programs are kind of making progress on that continuum toward 2gen, but until they're truly measuring and accounting for outcomes for both populations within their programming, they're not at the full bore 2gen as we kind of see it. So they're on the journey toward a 2gen program. And we believe, again, that any high quality program or practice should have these other 4 indicators: engaging the voices of families, ensuring equity, racial and gender equity, fostering innovation and evidence, and aligning and linking systems. So now with that kind of just high level overview of 2gen and the work that how we help define this work as part of our role here at Ascend, I'm now going to dive into the Post-Secondary Success for Parents initiative, in particular, start off with who student parents are. So student parents, and this is research that was done by myself and our team over at Ascend, as well as some colleagues over at the Institute for Women's Policy Research. And this utilizes data from the federal student aid system. What we saw is that student parents are majority women of color. So about 51% of the population are women of color. If you look at a gender and racial breakdown, you see that, for example, if you look at Black women or African-American women, 40% of African-American women enrolled in baccalaureate pathways, so an associate's or bachelor's degree granting pathway, 40% of them are mothers. The next highest up are 36% of American Indian Alaska Native women are parents enrolled in college, and 35% of Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander individuals, women who are enrolled in college, are parents. For men perspective, 21% for Black men, 21% for American Indian, and 23% for Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. So, so there are certain populations here who have, significant numbers of individuals who are student parents. The largest share of student parents are enrolled at community colleges. So this pie equals 100%. So we see out of the total student parent population that 42% of that population are enrolled at public 2-year institutions, or we consider to be community colleges. What's also interesting about this graph too is that you see there's kind of an overrepresentation of student parents at for-profit colleges. So they make about 18% of this total pie are at for-profit colleges. But if you were just look at the enrollment of students at for-profit colleges just as a whole, almost half of students at for-profit colleges are parents. So this is again, it makes sense considering the sort of advertisement and sort of connection that for-profit colleges have made in terms of trying to market toward adult students. And it may be partly why other parts of higher education need to really focus on this population in order to build enrollment and remove stigma in many cases of student parents being enrolled in institutions. What we also saw in this data is that the amount of student parents enrolling at public 4-year institutions have actually been increasing. And actually the amount of those enrolled at community colleges were actually decreasing slightly. So it does seem to be student parents are enrolling in more selective pathways and are interested in going to 4-year institutions. We also know that student parents are talented, that they have higher GPAs than their childless peers, which I think is really important to say, considering that also too, the opportunity is really great for this population. 53% of student parents have children under the age of 6. So we're talking about a population across the board who have young children who are looking to be served by this system. And so quickly, what's in their way? We know a lot of what's in their way. Unsurprisingly, access to childcare is the largest in this word cloud. And it's because we know in many cases, the cost of childcare exceeds the cost of public tuition in many states, over 40 states per my colleagues over at IWPR say. We also know that student parents experience this concept of time poverty, that they have about half the time to dedicate to academic pursuits as compared to non-parents. We know from research over at the Hope Center that student parents have experienced food and housing insecurity at higher rates than non-parents. They have 2.5 times the student debt load as compared to non-parents. And so there are a lot of barriers that they face. And yet we see that if they're able to be fully enrolled, even with all these barriers, they have higher GPAs and they typically are very successful in their pathways if we can remove some of the barriers that they're facing, many of which are dealing with living costs, childcare, and other important needs that they have. So what we've been doing here at Ascend is, and under the PSP banner, is really trying to address these issues in different ways and different levers. So I'm going to tap on quickly just a few of the ways that we've been trying to address this issue in our work. The first is our policy acceleration partnership. So back earlier this year, in March of this year, we gave $150,000 to 6 different sites, so altogether $900,000 to 5 states and 1 city across the country to really build better partnerships cross agency, also with philanthropy, nonprofits, and the like at the table to create better supports for students who are parents. We know that students' parents are accessing childcare and subsidized childcare, state and federal financial aid programs, food stamps and SNAP, and all these different programs, and yet there are varying eligibility requirements, and these systems are fairly siloed and not talking to one another. And so we wanted to come up with a way to bring together these stakeholders in 5 states and 1 city that were selected to really think about how they can work together across agency and along other partners to build a better set of supports and safety nets for student parents. And so Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Georgia, and Colorado were the states chosen. And then Long Beach, California was the 1 city that was chosen for this endeavor. And there's more detail about this on our website. We also, and this is a picture of 11 of our parent advisors and their families. We also, again, as I mentioned, a tenet of 2Gen is engaging the voices of parents and families. And so we take that very seriously in our PSP work. We have 11 parent advisors who are students who are parents at various spots in their post-secondary journey, some of which have recently completed their credentials, some have stopped out and went back and re-enrolled. Some are starting community colleges, some are going to graduate school, some are in bachelor's degree programs. We have 2 that actually did vocational programs and don't have an associate's or bachelor's degree. And they ensure that our work is rooted in their lived experience. They are compensated for this work. They act as advocates. So they go around speaking, kind of how I am speaking to you all about this work. Sometimes a student parent advisor will do this on our behalf because they can really showcase and share their perspective in this work. And we also did a participatory grant making fund with them where they chose 6 recipients to receive $25,000 grants they helped build the RFP and chose the recipients of those resources, all again with the goal in mind of post-secondary success for parents. So our parents are really engaged in this work. And then the last lever I will talk about is our post-secondary leaders. So we have a leadership circle of 20 colleges, many of which are community colleges, but there's also some 4-year institutions who have committed to capturing data and building and expanding supports for student parents within their institutions. And so we're really excited. We've been working with these institutions now for the last almost 18 months. And we're starting to see some progress in terms of their work and how they are building supports for student parents within their institutions. And so our work is really connected to colleges and what they're doing. It's about states and cities and localities and trying to engage there and all these kind of key levers that exist within the post-secondary spaces. Last thing I want to touch before I end my presentation is that we also last year put out a series of 7 briefs, really touching on different solutions and innovations for students who are parents that tap on what campuses can do, mental health supports, non-degree credentials. And so I'll also share a link to our website with our PSP content in the chat where you can go take a look at some of these briefs because I know a lot of people are interested in kind of what can we do in our institutions or within our organizations to serve this population better. And so these briefs were meant to be a way to invoke some really good ideas and thoughts on how to serve this population. So that's it for the presentation. Thank you again for this space, UWBA Bay Area. Please stay connected. I'll throw my email and a link to our PSP content in the chat and really appreciate this space. So thank you very much.
All right, yeah, thank you so much, David. And with that, I will start kind of a follow-up presentation. So my name is Peter Markonyan. I'm a community impact fellow at UWBA Bay Area. And I'm going to kind of hope to build off of a little bit of what David was talking about, especially at broader kind of national level trends and national programs to kind of segue into what we're doing specifically at SparkPoint with our kind of process and move towards more comprehensive 2-gen programming. So with that, I'm just going to try and share screen. All right, is that coming through for everyone? Okay, excellent. So this presentation is entitled Supporting Whole Families, but it really is a focus on SparkPoint Community Schools, which was a model within kind of, or a form of the SparkPoint model that United Way has operated. So this presentation is really about kind of evaluating the SparkPoint Community Schools model and compiling lessons that the model taught us about successful 2-generational programming at SparkPoint specifically. So the presentation will detail kind of the evolution of the SparkPoint Community School model since 2011. And then it's going to highlight the impact of the model on families. And then we're going to talk about kind of the recommendations that we've distilled for ourselves for really moving towards 2-gen and more comprehensive 2-gen programming at SparkPoint in the future, especially at community colleges. So I just want to move along now into our model description. So don't worry if you're not totally familiar with SparkPoint at this point. I'll go in a little bit more into what that is right after this. But the SparkPoint Community Schools vision is essentially to take SparkPoint services and give them or put them into a school environment so that more low-income parents have access to those services in that environment, and the whole family can experience success. So SparkPoint the SparkPoint Community Schools model was launched with support from the SEMER Institute. And I'll also actually mention that we are part of the SEMER network, and I see some SEMER folks in the audience, so shout out to you, thank you. But the vision was really to build financial capability, of families in order to support the academic success of their children in communities throughout the Bay Area. So the activities that were kind of included in that involved integrating SparkPoint into a community school environment, providing SparkPoint services in that environment, which include like financial coaching, job search assistance, benefit screening, enrollment assistance, cash assistance, career development, and kind of a number of other things depending on the site. And then obviously we wanted to recruit parents. We wanted to host parent university workshops, which are kind of workshops centered around helping parents or working with parents to engage in their children's education. And then that was also the broader goal of the entire program, was this kind of engagement of families with their children's education. So our desired impact was definitely to see kind of an increase in participating families' financial stability and self-sufficiency, which is part of the broader kind of goal of SparkPoint. But with SparkPoint Community Schools, we also were really looking to improve partnerships between low-income families and school staff, definitely. And then, of course, for students, we really wanted to see kind of improved academic achievement that was measurable. Just kind of as David mentioned, we wanted to be able to get that evidence and show it to really truly be 2-gen in this program. So with that being said, I'll kind of move into a little bit of a narrativized history of SparkPoint in the program. I won't dig as deep into SparkPoint itself, as that's not necessarily the focus of this, but SparkPoint is United Way Bay Area's kind of flagship impact program. SparkPoint centers, they serve as one-stop sites where low-income individuals and families can access a range of integrated services. Centers work with families really to meet basic needs, increase income, build credit, increase savings, and reduce debt. And that's kind of the core of the SparkPoint services and model. So SparkPoint Community Schools was created in 2011 to kind of build on that. The reason we kind of moved into this space was there was a needs assessment essentially conducted in the broader Bay Area to identify if SparkPoint could be leveraged to improve educational outcomes for students at community schools. And this assessment kind of confirmed a gap in economic success programs and services for parents of school-aged children. So the plan was basically to establish SparkPoints at community school sites to provide those services to parents with school-aged students. Additionally, a wide body of evidence and established research has shown a strong correlation between a family's socioeconomic success and student achievement, and growth in parental income in some studies has been established as kind of a positive variable with child's academic success. So that was also in mind as we created this program. So the scope of this kind of presentation and research starts in 2015, kind of as the program's established and we have families really participating in it. And in fiscal year 15 specifically, 2015, we have 80 unique families. And then the end of the scope of this research is in fiscal year 2020, where we got up to a total over the course of that time span of 587 unique families. So I want to just kind of go in quickly through impact and kind of the actual numbers of what the program did for families and also who was participating. So just kind of part one on by the numbers. So, the SparkPoint Community Schools program, it did grow steadily since inception. I will get to those kind of yellow boxes because they do suggest not growth. But the site served 80 unique families in fiscal year 15. We grew to 209 unique families the next year, 251. So you're seeing 81 and 70 after that. Because we had some, we completed a data migration at that point between databases for SparkPoint from one older or a different model into a Salesforce-based model. And through that process, there was data loss. It seems at least one site and some perhaps misclassified data. So we are seeing kind of lower totals in those years. That being said, the number's probably somewhere closer to the 200-ish range, just based off of kind of the other data sources we have available about those sites. So the median client at the SparkPoint Community School sites was around 35 to 45 years old, identified as a woman, was married or in a domestic partnership, identified as Latinx, and primarily spoke Spanish at home, and had attained a high school diploma or a GED as their highest level of formal education. So that kind of demographic profile actually diverges a little bit from our SparkPoint numbers today, where you see closer to kind of equal representation of African-American and Latinx clients. Part of this can be explained by the geography of the centers. One of our largest SparkPoint Community School sites was at Dover Elementary School in West Contra Costa Unified in Richmond, which is a school that has about a 90% Latinx population during that time period. So that can kind of explain some of the divergence between broader SparkPoint numbers in this program. So in terms of outcomes, we definitely saw a lot of positive numbers over this time period for folks who participated. When clients first came in, they had about 65% of what we would consider to be a self-sufficient income, according to their geography and family characteristics. And looking at median numbers, we see, about $400 in total debt, kind of at the middle, $400 in savings, credit score 604, and about $33,000 in annual income. And then we see growth really, or, in the case of debt, we see a decrease, not growth, which is good that it's a decrease. But we see, positive trends on all of these, especially in savings, which is something that a lot of clients, highlight as a really big positive at SparkPoint, and also positive trends in income, credit, and on debt. So, we established that there's these positive trends for families. It was a little bit more difficult with students, across fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 15 to 20, we gathered data on a total of 395 students. But, we didn't really gather baseline and then follow-up as well. And as for as many students, they seem to, show kind of positive trends in attendance and in GPA of some of the factors that we were able to get, but we ultimately obtained very little data on academic indicators for a number of reasons. It was a difficult process to navigate kind of the process of securing the necessary consents, securing, like the consent of the district, navigating data protection laws, things like that. So we did find that to be a challenge. However, we did do these parent surveys through an external evaluator, and through those kind of qualitative surveys, we found, really positive evidence when it comes to SparkPoint Community Schools models, its ability to kind of get parents feeling kind of more engaged in children's education, or help parents kind of grow towards that. So, parents saw improved economic outcomes and felt more engaged with their children's academic journeys. most parents stated that after attending SparkPoint, they investigated things like college savings accounts. They, consistently felt more actively involved in their children's schooling. So there was clearly something positive for the children, but we really weren't able to robustly measure those outcomes, especially on GPA and on other factors for the students' experience at school. So, as part of a process of working towards 2Gen, but there clearly were some difficulties in getting that data. So all that being said, that's like a lot of information, a lot of data. We are trying to basically, with this presentation and company reports, distill kind of what we learned from all of that. Because at this point in time, SparkPoint is moving into, especially a lot of community college sites. At these community college sites, we're seeing a lot of student parents. About half of our clients at community college sites are student parents. And we want to learn basically what did the SparkPoint Community Schools model say about our 2Gen programming at SparkPoint, and how can we use those lessons in this new setting and more broadly at SparkPoint. So to that end, we reviewed kind of all of our existing evaluations and assessments of the SparkPoint Community School model. We conducted a series of interviews between September 2020 and January 2021 with SparkPoint directors, coaches, and clients, all of whom experienced or administrated this model. And I just want to give a quick shout out. I see a number of folks who participate in these interviews in the audience, like Judy, Freddie. I'm sure I'm missing a couple other people, but I really appreciated getting the chance to get your insight through this. So the findings of these interviews, as well as our reviews of past assessments and evaluations, are kind of outlined and distilled into these 5 recommendations for helping us move towards 2Gen in our future SparkPoint services, and also just more broadly improving our service delivery for parents. So the first of these kind of recommendations that we distilled was the importance of building institutional connections. So at our SparkPoint community school sites, the model was really dependent on a strong working relationship, specifically between SparkPoint Center administrators and staff and their partner schools leaders and staff, and then the broader community of parents, other employees at the school, and et cetera. These relationships have really created stability. They created resources. They created the opportunity for referrals for SparkPoint. And when those relationships didn't exist, oftentimes programs would experience periods of difficulty. For example, a principal who was very close with the SparkPoint leaves, and then the SparkPoint goes through a kind of a period of turmoil. It's a little bit more difficult to access resources for the center, things like that. So we really found that it's important for our SparkPoint centers in the future to partner with multiple individuals. In the case of primary schools and middle schools, which is where the SparkPoint community schools were, that's principals, teachers, district administrative staff, et cetera. But then in the context of the community colleges, we're talking about deans, folks who are running other programs, like CalWorks, COPS, et cetera, where you want to have these broader connections to create stability for parents. The next lesson that we have is, another kind of administrative one, but definitely welcoming families with childcare and other relevant amenities. And David touched on this in his presentation as well, but it's, we've seen that adapting spaces and programs to parents really just makes them more likely to participate because they feel more welcome when, it feels like their children are also welcome. And this is something that really came out in these client interviews with, with parents. We found that connecting to parents through their children and offering relevant services, especially for those children, mainly childcare, but also, just things like snacks or, welcoming kind of environment to the child, made spaces more accessible to parents and really allowed them to give their full attention to the programming. So our kind of recommendations around that would be explicitly naming that children are welcome at SparkPoint, and providing snacks, providing activities for children, and providing childcare if possible. And I know that's obviously complicated by COVID, but it's something that was really powerful for a lot of the clients we spoke to, especially when they were co-located to create logistical ease. And that logistical ease segues well into this next item. Location is something that oftentimes is out of maybe the control of the direct administrators of the SparkPoint. But David touched on that concept of time poverty, or other people have used the term like a time tax. When the services are difficult to get to, it costs clients time. And one thing that we found through these interviews, especially clients who are parents, is that time is obviously a precious resource. And, it's something that we want to that's something that we really want to think about in our programming. So, lack of convenient space hampered some clients from accessing services and some sites. And in some cases, we had anecdotes about like kind of having to look around an area, looking for the signage, looking for the center, things like that. And, it's kind of a base level administrative thing, but at least for the parents that we talked to, it's something where it seemed like it could really have a big impact just in like saving that 15 minutes, that 10 minutes, et cetera. And, when possible, service centers could be or should be, like in a location that's easy to get to using public transportation, especially. They should have clear signage that's visible from the street or else a central part of the campus that they're on. And, when assessing a location, it's really hard, we know, for our centers to get everything that one would want out of a location. But, there are questions to ask just about, the trade-offs and the benefits. Is it a place where parents might otherwise gather? Is it a location or neighborhood that's easy to get to? So then our next kind of recommendation that we distilled from this process was providing culturally relevant services. So, according to, especially when we talk to kind of director staff and staff at SparkPoint, being able to provide workshops and one-on-one services in multiple languages really expanded program reach and effectiveness. So, within the SparkPoint Community Schools model, Spanish was the primary language spoken at home by clients. It was about 77% folks spoke Spanish primarily at home. And several sites really relied heavily on maybe one Spanish-speaking coach or several Spanish-speaking coaches to, supply services to those clients. And, having maybe more of an expanded base of language support would have been helpful for those sites. But beyond language, cultural responsiveness, of course, we want to prioritize racial and ethnic representation and, racially and ethnically kind of responsive services at the sites. So, at our sites, clients would kind of say that having racially representative staff, having racially representative, folks that they're interacting with at that site, it was something that built credibility. And, obviously building equity and racial diversity and those things into the programming, there's a moral imperative to do so. And it also added, a lot of credibility ultimately to these centers. And we even heard an anecdote of this situation at a school where, parents maybe weren't feeling as trusting of school staff who skewed white in an area where, there were a lot of families of color, people of color at that school. And then SparkPoint being more racially and ethnically representative and more looking like that community led to SparkPoint kind of having more credibility in the school and kind of picking up a lot of parents' needs that the school should have otherwise been kind of addressing. And, we don't recommend that for a SparkPoint because it can't really comprehensively provide all those services, but it's an example of the way in which that representation really builds and contributes to the credibility of a center. Our recommendation around that really centers on this idea of just like data collection. SparkPoint centers, and they really need to be kind of aware of both community demographics and then also especially the racial inequities that exist in the community that they're serving. And then staff demographics would be important to collect as well, including language spoken and race/ethnicity, to be used to create kind of more effective program offerings and align racial representation of the staff and the leadership of the SparkPoint with the community that it's serving. So then kind of the last point, which is another one that David touched on, is the concept of social capital. So social capital in the past hasn't been something that SparkPoint has so kind of intentionally highlighted as a big part of the program. However, when we talk to clients and when we talk to staff, it's something not only that clients really value, but it's something that exists at a lot of SparkPoints and we felt definitely has space to expand. So when we say social capital, we're broadly referring to the connections, networks, or relationships that can help individuals succeed in life. Social capital yields benefits in the form of emotional support, information access, and various forms of economic support, particularly in seeking employment. This is like kind of just interesting statistic, but according to research from 2015 from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, about 50% of the jobs in the US are actually found through kind of social connection or, exerting one's social capital. And those who get jobs through that mechanism are more likely to stay in those positions for longer. So, all of our sites kind of off the bat offered some form of group services that yielded social capital benefits. It's just that they may not have been called out. So, these included networking activities among parents, group graduation ceremonies, a lot of group dinners, offering leadership and employment opportunities directly to the parents who are clients. Some sites also offered, parent university workshops, which included kind of these networking elements. And also kind of leveraging partnerships with employers in the community to build relationships between clients and those employers or folks who worked at those employers. Examples being banks, other kind of community employers that clients could conceivably move via SparkPoint into positions at. So our recommendations around social capital were definitely to be intentional about building it, including social capital as a goal of the program. So clients should ideally be able to make connections with peers and build a network as part of the program and have that be called out as a part of SparkPoint more broadly. We also want to incorporate more peer learning opportunities like group financial courses into our service offerings. And that was something that a lot of clients touched upon in our interviews was the desire for more of these group opportunities just to meet other parents, network, and kind of build that social capital. So with that, that kind of wraps up the recommendations. I would just say that, all of these kind of learnings that we've been compiling are all part of this broader effort of, like David mentioned, moving towards 2Gen and building towards having truly 2Gen programming. And we're working this into our current SparkPoint toolkit effort, where we're kind of building a tool for planning out SparkPoints in the future at post-secondary institutions with the help of the College Futures Foundation. And we're obviously conducting this research into past successes and lessons. But with that, I am done. And I'll hand it over to Judy to introduce our client ambassador.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Peter, for all that data and information. My name is Julie Hong, and I am a SparkPoint coordinator and financial coach at Kenyatta College. I have the honor today of introducing you a student and a mother of 3 beautiful children and an inspiration really to so many people. Marcia and I met in 2018, and we've been working over the years on her financial and educational goals. She recently graduated from Kenyatta, magna cum laude, and has been a part of Phi Theta Kappa, which is a community college honor society. And she's been on the dean's list many times. She's taught me many things over the years, and I'm honored to have been a part of her journey. And so if you can all please virtually join me in welcoming Marcia as she shares with us her SparkPoint journey and how SparkPoint has been a part of her life at Kenyatta College. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, Julie. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marcia, and I'm a mother of 3 children, a college student, and a SparkPoint client. I came to the United States 5 years ago. For 1.5 years, I took ESL classes to improve my English while I was taking care of my 4-month-old daughter, my 1.5-year-old son, my preschooler, and working graveyard full-time in a retail store. Since the spring of 2018, I was focusing on getting my degree in digital art and animation and getting my web design certificate. As a first-generation college student having ADHD, I struggled with every simple college procedure. I found myself confused on how to apply to financial aid or get simple information about college services, including the food pantry that could help my family. Luckily, I saw a flyer of SparkPoint, and I went to their office with my 2-year-old daughter, and Adolfo Leiva and Julie Hong were very friendly and caring with me. I felt like I came to the right place to ask all my questions. I spoke about my financial hardship, and they helped me. I had access to the food pantry, financial coaching, Kenyatta Cash, and they also advised me on how to write an essay to apply to scholarships. I learned how to manage my budget, how to start and build my credit, and think about how can I save my money. Thanks to SparkPoint guidance, I received my first scholarship and became a full-time student to achieve my academic goals faster. If it wasn't for SparkPoint, I would still be wandering on the hallways of Cañada College, trying to learn how to access the services. And when I went to SparkPoint, I was relieved because I could speak with people that had the knowledge about support systems that I could access. And it was hard for me at that time because I had only my young children to speak to. So I was the support system for my children. And with SparkPoint, now I feel that I had a support system for myself. And I want to show my children that nunca es tarde para alcanzar tus metas, which means it is never too late to reach your goals. My goal for my children is for them to access and have an easier ability to get higher education. I want to lead by example for my children that show them that education is a privilege. Through higher education, we can achieve our dreams. In March of 2020, when the COVID pandemic hit, it was hard for my family financially. I was unable to work because I had to take care of my children and homeschool them while we were sheltering in place. I was able to use my scholarship money to pay our monthly utility bills, and my husband worked as much as possible to pay our rent. Cañada College provided me and my family a $75 gift card each month to purchase food. And we also received the UWBA area rental assistance in April 2021. That helped us to catch up on our rent and not to have to depend on extended family for that month. And this gave me a peace of mind as I could protect my family and focus more on my education. I was very anxious and I had a hard time focusing on the financial support that from SparkPoint helped me stay on track and with my studies and take care of my children. Now I have obtained my associate degree in digital art and animation and a certificate in web design from Cañada College. And I will be trying my bachelor's degree in digital media art. And after I get my bachelor's degree, I would like to start my own design studio. I would like to focus on my website designs on accessibility for people of all abilities. And thanks to SparkPoint, I have learned how to take steps of manage my own financial well-being. I feel empowered because I have the systems in place to control my finances and how to help my family now and in the future. And thank you, SparkPoint, UWBA area for being here for me to achieve my academic goals. And because the support will assist me with my long-term career goals and to be there for my family. And without your support, I wouldn't be here talking to you. And your assistance not only helps me to build a better future for me and my family, but also changes the life for the families and our children and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcia, for sharing your story. I think that I speak for everyone when I say that was incredibly inspiring. And I just want to say thank you for your courage, for sharing your story today. Your strength and your dedication to your goals and your family in the face of so much adversity is truly admiring. And I just can't thank you enough. Peter and David, thank you also for taking the time to share your informative stories with our presentations with us, and for participating in this webinar. Next, we will transition into our breakout sessions. We will randomly assign you to breakout groups. You can feel free to participate or just sit back and listen. The two discussions will be centered around two questions. What was your biggest takeaway from this session? And two, please brainstorm how you can support United Way's work in helping young adults in career and education. Your staff leaders will also post those questions in the chat, so don't worry about remembering them. So, Chana, if you would start the breakout rooms, awesome. Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for participating in those breakout sessions. I hope that you all found this webinar to be informative and impactful. And thank you again so much to our speakers for sharing your presentations and your story, and just for all of the work that you're doing in our community. We will follow up with a brief survey if you have any questions or feedback about this webinar. We'd love your feedback because we really want to continue hosting these webinars, and we just appreciate any feedback that you might be able to provide. Thank you from Women United and Tocqueville Society for participating and learning a little bit more about how SparkPoint disrupts generational poverty in the Bay Area. So with that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and it's almost the weekend.